Welcome to this week's Talking Politics USA, and it's a very special edition of the show because I'm delighted to be joined from Washington by NBC News' senior politics reporter, Jonathan Allen. Now, we're calling him Jonathan at that point. That's what his mother named him. But for the rest of the chat, we can call him John. As well as his work for NBC, John has also co-authored a new best-selling book on the 2024 election campaign, and it's called Fight: Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House. Now, John, it's very good to see you, although you do look like you're in a sauna.
It's just the little cubby hole beneath the deck in the backyard of my house in Washington, but it does look a lot nicer than it is.
You've been banished to the garden then for this recording.
That's right. It's the one place that I know the kids won't scream and yell, the dog won't bark, and the worst case scenario is you hear some birds chirping.
So you are a wry and well-informed observer over there. Tell me, what story does your book tell? What bits of gossip, what bits of juice are in your book that you can tell me about?
I mean, there's so much. So just to give you an idea, we start with the debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and where all of the Democratic leadership was at that moment. And most of them were watching by themselves because they had an inkling, they had a premonition, they had some, I don't want to say advanced knowledge, but they certainly knew that Joe Biden wasn't quite right, and they were worried about how that would go. We've got a number of indications of Biden's declining mental acuity that we go into, whether that's his failure to recognize people that he's known for a long time, or freezing up, literally physically freezing up momentarily at times over the course of a few years, to not being able to go to meetings, to having meetings with his cabinet where he, is reading off of scripts with large print. Go through all of that, and then we get into the moment where he hands off the baton to Kamala Harris, and that had previously been reported as something where he calls her up and he says, "I'm getting out and I'm endorsing you," and that's not actually what happened. He forced Harris to beg him for an immediate endorsement.
To beg?
Had he not? Yes. So let me. This is, I think, one of the most incredible revelations in the book. Certainly in reporting it, it's when my jaw dropped.
How did you find this out, John?
Through sources who were privy to the information. Let's put it that way. And when you read the book, we really take you inside the room. And if you'll give me a moment to unwind it, I think this is a pretty good story, which is, Biden is being pressured by a lot of Democrats to get out of the race, and he's sticking firm, and he's basically saying, "I'm the only one that can beat Donald Trump." But eventually, he's going to decide to get out of the race, and people know that. But what they don't know is that on the day that he decides to get out of the race, before she is informed that that's going to happen, Kamala Harris's team, her brother-in-law and several of her closest aides, and a couple of sort of top leaders in the party, are gathered in her pool house outside the vice president's residence. There's a pool and there's a little pool house, and they're in there and they're kind of strategizing about what they should do in the event that Biden drops out. How is Kamala Harris going to lock down the support that she needs to win the Democratic nomination if Biden gets out? And this is literally going on the morning that he decides that he's going to get out. And then the meeting is interrupted because Joe Biden has called the vice president, and she's in her house, in her private quarters, and the meeting's interrupted, and her aides are told, "You need to go rush up and get to her because she's on the phone with Biden right now." And Biden is telling her he's going to get out. And she says, "Are you sure?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm sure." And she says, "Well, are you going to endorse me?" And for her, once he gets out, if he doesn't endorse her, the nomination still hasn't been decided officially, and there are other people that might want to jump in, a whole bunch of governors, senators, and the like, who want to jump in and compete for this. And she says to him, "That's exactly right." And she says, "Are you going to endorse me?" And he says, "Well, you've got my support, kid." And for any politician, certainly in the U.S., if you ask someone if they're going to endorse you and you don't hear the E word back from them, it is basically the F word.
Wow.
And he
Why?
says to
Why
her,
not endorse her? Did he not particularly like her? Didn't think she could do it, or why?
so for 3 weeks, his team had been telling everyone that would listen that she wasn't good enough. In order to try to save him, they tried to drown her and say to everybody, the alternative is Kamala Harris, and boy, you don't want her. So, better buck up and stick with the president. But I think the real reason for him, the biggest reason for him was he wanted to take a little bit of a valedictory lap.
Hmm.
He wanted to bask in the glory of his moment. And so what he says to her is, well, listen, maybe I'm gonna put out a statement today saying that I'm getting out of the race, and maybe in a few days I'll endorse you, or in a few days I'll endorse you. And she knows that time is of the essence, that there are all these competing Democrats that want this nomination. And so she's pushing him on the phone. And this is, I mean, as it turns out, like within an hour of when he officially drops out, she pushes him on the phone, and he says, "Listen, you're making some good points." She says to him, "If you don't endorse me, everyone's going to know that you think you made a mistake when you picked me to be vice president in the first place. You said to the country, I'm the next best person to be president, and it reflects poorly on your own legacy if you don't choose me, if you don't endorse me, if you let it hang there in the air and people think that you don't support me." And he says, you make some good points, and they get off the phone without it resolved. And then her aides write up a statement for him to make about her, and they get back on the phone, and he agrees that he'll put that statement out a little bit later. It turns out being about half an hour after his statement that he's dropping out. And the thing that's fascinating that we also report on is that Barack Obama, the former president of the United States, at the same time is still pushing this idea that there should be an open primary, that there should be some sort of primary contest in an open Democratic convention to choose the successor to Biden. Even after Biden has endorsed Harris, Obama is working against
He
her.
wasn't that in support of her either.
Right. He thought she was a disaster. He did not support her. He wanted her not to be the nominee. And the same thing for Nancy Pelosi, the former Speaker of the House, who was very instrumental in pushing the party to put pressure on Biden to get out.
Now, John, I mean, let's rewind a tiny, tiny bit there before we even get to this point where he's stepping down. I think so many people, particularly this week, there's been lots of revelation coming across the pond to us about Biden's mental acumen, his health, everything and we all saw the debate performance. And what I suppose lots of people are asking, why, when so many people on his team knew what kind of a situation they were dealing with and what kind of state his health was in, why did it take for them to get to that debate performance to really change up and let him step down?
I think because they were getting away with it, Lucy. I mean, I think that's why. Until that debate performance, when the entire country saw a president of the United States bereft of coherent thought. I mean, we like to think of the president as the leader of the free world, guy with his hand on the nuclear button. I think for the American people to see the president in that condition was terrifying. And I imagine for a lot of people across the world. And so they couldn't get away with the deception anymore. And what we had seen over the course of time was Biden's people had hidden him. My co-author Amie Parnes and I wrote a book about the 2020 election called Lucky, How Joe Biden Barely Won the Presidency. And in it, we talk about how keeping him off the campaign trail in 2020, when he was, already getting more frail, when you could see signs of his behavior changing. He's more likely to sort of yell at voters at events. He seemed a little addled at times. Uh, we wrote that book in 2020, and there was this, sort of tremendous pushback against it. But the pandemic had helped his team hide it. There was a reason for him to be off of the campaign trail, and he gets into the White House, and the same thing. They were able to sort of, keep him away from a lot of people because of the pandemic as it continued, and then the COVID pandemic, and then they just kept getting away with it. And so I think that was an incentive to think that they could get through another election with Biden, certainly much more declined by 2024 than he was in 2020.
Now, John, I mean, we know now categorically that he is a very poorly man. It's not curable, his particular cancer. Everything that's happened in the last week, running in parallel to that cancer diagnosis, the revelations about just how bad his health was mentally and his abilities and his faculties in that campaign in 2024. Is this now going to be his legacy for a man who perhaps won't be around for very, very long to carve out another one? Is all of this speculation, rumor, intrigue, whatever, nastiness, you might say, is that all now going to be part of the legacy of Joe Biden for a man who's worked so hard in such an extensive career in politics?
The short answer is yes. This is his legacy. It's not the entirety of his legacy, but for anybody who watched this, so, people my age, I'm sure you're much younger, people your age, some of the folks watching who, it'll be fresh in our memories. This is the way we will remember Joe Biden. I can't speak to what history will say 50 years or 100 years from now. But, ultimately, the thing that's most historic about his presidency is that he had to abandon his re-election bid after it was clear that he was the choice of his party. I don't think we've ever seen that in American politics. So that will certainly be a large part of his legacy. And the irony, and I guess the tragic irony in a sort of traditional literary sense is, of course, that he has this legacy, this sort of negative legacy because of the things that he did to try to build his legacy to be even bigger and to be more important, right? He wants to win this second term, wants to stop Trump again, believes that he will be seen as an even bigger hero and even more consequential person in American political history. And he, we have a term, I don't know if you guys use it or not, the GOAT, the greatest of all time. We apply it to sports.
That's a new one on me, but that doesn't necessarily mean we don't use it over here, to be honest.
GOAT, so we did you say? To sports figures. Yeah, GOAT, greatest of all time. We apply it to sports figures.
Are you the greatest of all time, Jonathan, over there?
I am not. I'm not. Lucy, you are the greatest of all time.
Why, thank you.
Sure
We've only just met, but I'm grateful.
I'm sure that you never wanted to be referred to as a GOAT before, but now that you know what it means.
I'll take it. Yeah.
But what I was going to say is, so we use that for sports figures like the American football player Tom Brady, who won all the Super Bowls, is considered the GOAT of football, or Michael Jordan, the basketball player, considered the GOAT of basketball by many. So, Joe Biden wanted to be the GOAT in politics, and as a result, ended up being the sort of more traditional farm animal type of scapegoat. That's the sort of, the literary tragic situation that he found himself in, that he was the victim of his own his own ambition.
As many people are now. John, it was the most consequential election of our time, both not just for the US but for the world, and we're seeing that almost on a daily basis now. How do the Democrats now sort themselves out? I mean, from over here, they feel almost invisible to me. They don't even seem to have any kind of identity at the moment. How are they going to fix this?
Yeah, well, I mean, you've got a microscope on them as well as a telescope to see that they are invisible. I mean, you're right. It's not just from over there. It's from here and from inside the closed meeting of Democrats. They are lost. They don't have a strategy against Trump. They don't have a real strategy for coming back as a party right now. And I think they're deeply in the wilderness. And we have a two-party system, so eventually they'll be back. But I think that they have a lot of soul searching to do in terms of why it is that they had three such close elections against Trump, two which they lost, one which they won. When they think that he is so terrible, like that, the Democratic Party has told the American people that Donald Trump is effectively the devil, and yet they've had these three very close elections against him. And I think that they have a lot of work to do to figure out what it either what they're selling, the way they're selling what they've got isn't very good, or what they've got isn't very good. And either way, I think they got to do a big reassessment.
I mean, yeah, I love them or hate them. We do know what the Republican message is, and we've used the word invisible. But who is going to change that? Does it take a figurehead, a voice striding towards the front to take over? Does it take that kind of the image, the person, to change things? Is that what we're waiting for?
I actually think it's the opposite. I think it is the substance. I think that the Democratic Party has grown in the United States has grown somewhat stale. It is attached to the same set of issues. It has basically become an anti-Trump coalition that is holding on to a certain set of policies that they've had for a long time. And I think they need to refresh. And of course, it is helpful to them at some point if they've got, some candidate that comes in and captures the mind of the country, has charisma and to carry the message. But I think before they get to the point of the messenger, they really need to figure out what it is their substance is. And I mean, I could be wrong about that, but I've interviewed a lot of Democrats and a lot of people outside the Democratic Party and been watching politics a long time, and I think they're stale.
Who do you fancy at the moment? And any names, do you think? Any names coming to the fore, do you think, at the moment?
I've got no ability.
Who should I put a bet on at this stage in the game?
We should, except for I'm not allowed to fancy politicians, but I appreciate your use of fancy because we don't use it that way here that much, and I think we should definitely bring it into our lexicon more. Yeah,
by all means. I'm not allowed
to choose candidates. Given what I do as a reporter. But there are a lot of people out there that are looking at running, and many of their names have been sort of out there before as potential candidates. The governor of California, Gavin Newsom, governors of Illinois and Michigan, J.B. Pritzker and Gretchen Whitmer, governor of Maryland, Wes Moore. I mean, the list goes on and on. I think
just the way you rattled off that list, John, it's like, yeah, they're just names. There doesn't seem even from that list that there's anyone standout.
Yeah, no, this is not like some episode of a period drama where all of a sudden you see the prince on the white horse, coming to save the town.
But that's what they need. That's exactly what they do need.
They do. They will eventually need that. I think they need to build the horse first, right?
Okay,
like they need
fair
to
enough.
have the horse. But I would just say this. I mean, that all of those candidates, all of the people I just mentioned, most of the rest of them had some contact with Joe Biden over the course of his presidency, and didn't blow a whistle, and didn't say, had face-to-face contact. Now they're going to go out there and say, "Well, I never saw him like that." Yeah. But I think that the Democratic Party, at least the leadership of the Democratic Party, lied not only to the country broadly, but even to their own voters. And I think it's going to be a tough question for those folks who are already in positions of power to deal with. What were you doing to bring out the truth when Joe Biden was struggling in the presidency? Because it's not just a question of political viability. It's a question of whether the man was capable of protecting Americans and their families, during his presidency.
I mean, did you see it? Did you witness anything yourself? Did you
think
it was that bad? You saw it on TV like the rest of us.
Yeah, I didn't have personal contact with him, but we could see, everybody could see some level of decline. I think what we couldn't see until that debate was just how bad it was, because you didn't see long periods of Biden talking, right? And you didn't see him being tested in the way that a debate tests people. And, sometimes Americans question the value of presidential debates, and I would humbly submit that they are valuable. And we have a pretty good recent example of why they're valuable.
Yep, there's no escape, basically. There's no escape. You are in the raw if you do one of those debates. Right, I've got a question for you. Is the relationship between us and the US as special for President Trump as it is for Sir Keir Starmer?
No.
I didn't ask for a one-word answer, but that was short and sweet, definitely.
But the reason that I say that is simply that Trump is not steeped in he's not steeped in the relationship over the course of 75, or hundreds of years, but I mean, particularly in the, the the post-war era. I think I think it just doesn't mean as much to him as some of the people who have spent time building those relationships over the course of their entire lifetimes on the political level. That said, he clearly sees Britain as the U.S.'s closest ally and partner, and his interest in trying to get a trade deal and Prime Minister Starmer's interest in getting that done fast and how effectively that was done, I think is an indication of it. So I think the president, and look, the president loves the UK. And so,
Is
I
that
mean,
just because he gets invited to two state
yes,
visits?
totally, 100%. I mean, yes, look, there's no big secret to the way to get into Donald Trump's heart. And it's to invite him to things and to give him things and to tell him how great he is. But look, I mean, he's also been, uh, uh, a businessman for a long time, traveled the world. I mean, I, I think your question was, is the relationship as special to Donald Trump as it is to Keir Starmer? And my answer is no, but that doesn't mean that it's unimportant to President Trump or that he doesn't understand the significance of it. I simply think that those who are, more attached to uh, careers in politics and more attached to that relationship over time have a higher regard for it than those who are newer to it.
So they're hanging on to it anyway, and whether the value of it
I mean,
is equal. But what could derail it, do you think?
I mean, I don't really think there's anything that could derail it. I say that, and we'll see something next week that changes that. But I mean, even in the face of massive tariffs and all that, I mean, obviously the two countries share intelligence, they share, culture. Not, our culture is different than your culture, but there are a lot of overlap because, not for nothing, you guys once owned us. Um, so, uh, but I think that relationship will continue to be strong. Britain will continue to be America's greatest ally, and I think vice versa. And by the way, particularly since Brexit,
Yeah.
that I think that makes the U.S. far more important to the UK than it was before, even though we were, I think, the biggest partner or the most important partner to the UK. And I think it gives the United States some more leverage with the UK, particularly as a trading partner.
Mm. Now, we kind of came back from our tariff spat. We managed to keep things on a level there, but we've just heard about announcements on tariffs on the European Union. Trump's clearly not done with this. I had thought that perhaps he was stepping away from it, despite the rhetoric. He's ploughing on, isn't he?
It's like you put one finger on a hot stove and then you withdraw it, and you're like, well, maybe if I put this other finger on the hot stove, it won't have the same result. So we'll see. But I mean, I also thought he had withdrawn his hand from the hot stove, and yet we're just seeing him try different fingers. I don't.
I mean, it popped up on my phone, and I thought, oh, I thought we'd done with that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's always possible that you could try the same thing over and over and again and get a different result. But um, you know, generally speaking, that's not true. We'll see what happens with the tariffs. They obviously rock various markets. There are people winning and losing tons of money every time he does this. It'll be interesting to follow that over time. Who's
Mm.
who's benefited from the Trump on again, off again tariff threats.
Yeah.
But I actually
What are you
thought the
trying to
UK
imply, John? Who might have benefited?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. But what I know is, with all the volatility, there is a lot going up and a lot going down. And over time, what you see is that the market it'll go down and then it'll return to where it was. And so for most of us, you're watching your retirement funds or whatever, and over the course of a couple of weeks, they go down, they go up, they get back to where they were. Not really a big deal. But all of the actions that happen around those announcements mean
Mm.
that there's a lot of people, there are people making a lot of money and losing a lot of money. So I'd just be curious to know what the result of it is. I'm not saying that there's intent from the president on that, but if you were, particularly keen or particularly smart about when he's going to announce something or might announce something and what the effect would be, you could make a lot of money off of it.
Mm.
Um,
Can I ask John,
I do think,
have you been in
I
the
do think,
Oval
by the way,
Office?
let me just say, the UK, I think, did really well in the trade deal with the US.
Mm. Yeah.
I think I actually think the
You
president
mean
was
handling him?
handling him, but I think the results of it were pretty good. I mean, as I read it, the U.S. market is more open to British products right now.
Mm-hmm.
Will be in the coming months. So, I don't know. I think that turned out pretty well for the UK. I think the president of the United States was eager to announce a trade deal, and the UK was smart to line up first.
Jolly good. Can I ask, have you been in the Oval Office?
Not with President Trump.
But you've been inside the space?
I have peered into it from outside.
Because right now it's a pretty hostile space to ever go into with Donald Trump. I mean, nobody will forget the Zelensky showdown. And then, we've had Cyril Ramaphosa's appearance the other day. World leaders are almost getting ambushed in there by Trump. Is this all part of his kind of strongman image? Is that what it's all about? Is this his new kind of stage for this?
It is a stage in a way that other presidents haven't used it, right? I mean, in the past, you've seen photographs from inside the Oval Office, or maybe a quick video scroll. Right now, the president's basically doing press conferences where foreign leaders are puppets, or they're puppets is the wrong word, but they're props, for him. So he has decided that in this space where he is the host and they are the guest. And he has the ability to sort of dominate the moment. It's not only something that he should be able to do behind closed doors, but something that he should do for all the world to see.
Yeah, it's belittling quite often. I would imagine any world leader going there will be thinking, what on earth is going to be served to me?
I think that's right. And I think that's the way that Donald Trump does business. And, I think there are times where that benefits him and benefits the United States. And I think there are times where that actually has the opposite effect and is not good for him and is not good for the United States. And I think you see that around the margins. It's the extent to which other countries and other world leaders are ready to cooperate with the United States on a variety of things. If they feel like they're being treated with disrespect. And by the way, it makes it harder for world leaders to deal with the United States if they believe they're being treated with disrespect, and the citizens of their country see them being treated with disrespect. Their country is being treated with disrespect, and it makes it harder for them to do things that are helpful to Donald Trump.
Yeah. We're also hearing a lot of warnings over here about Donald Trump descending into authoritarianism. Now, how much of that, I mean, when he's kind of, taking on the institutions, the courts, arresting judges, I mean, should this kind of expansion of his power, I mean, not seen anything like the like of it before, should this be taken seriously? Is it a fear out there for you guys?
Well, let me speak to what I'm hearing from Donald Trump's critics. Donald Trump's critics believe that the authorities that he has taken for himself as president represent a move toward authoritarianism, and that he is acquiring and accumulating dictatorial powers that were not designed in the Constitution for him to take. The people who support him are a little bit divided. Some of them think that he is not at all like that, and some of them think that he is like that, and they're happy about it. So I mean, I think there's some difference of opinion.
And you?
I think. Well, I'm not allowed to have opinions, but
I'm sure you've got plenty, though. You can tell us.
I can give you the observation. I mean, you said we haven't seen this before, right? We haven't seen anything like this before. We have seen many of the things that Donald Trump has done executed by other presidents or attempted by other presidents. We have not seen them all done simultaneously by one president, right? So he'll take one power that somebody used in the Civil War, and another one that somebody used during World War II, and another that somebody used during the Depression, and he'll try to take all of those powers for himself at once. And by the way, those emergency powers that were taken by past presidents, including um, uh, some of the deportation powers that they have. We have heard this White House talk about wanting to suspend the writ of habeas corpus, basically being able to deport people without any sort of process, detain and deport people without any sort of process. Those are typically war powers
Hmm.
in the past, and the United States is not at war.
Not at war. Hmm.
And the United States is not facing some sort of economic calamity that requires the president to take extreme measures because Congress can't act fast enough to save our economy. And so I think the fear is that if this president can take on all of these powers that have been reserved for emergencies in the past all at once, and he is somebody who likes to exercise the powers that he has, that he will move the country in a much more authoritarian, sort of unitary executive direction,
Hmm.
not only more of a direction than it has been before, but more than was designed by the founders.
Now, John, there are just a couple more things that I want to ask you before you have to leave me. Harvard is now suing the Trump administration for blocking its ability to enroll international students. What is Trump's issue with Harvard? I mean, it's your best uni in the country, isn't it? What is his problem with it?
Well, that's the problem,
Right.
right? The problem for Trump is with any institution that is independent of him. And so whether that is media outlets or it is universities or it is law firms that represent clients who might take him to court, he has targeted those people for punishment, to try to put a chilling effect on any sort of independent judgment of his presidency or any independent um, thinking about his presidency. And so, I mean, he loves to hate Harvard. He'll find, whatever the excuse is this time, he'll find another reason for it later. It's not just Harvard. There are other Ivy League schools that he bashes, and I think part of it is that they are, for a lot of the country, they're an unsympathetic victim, right?
Hmm.
The their eliteness is makes Harvard unpopular in the country, or at least a little easier to target than, say if he went after all of the state colleges.
Hmm. Now, I'm saving this last topic to the end just because it makes me smile, really. So, the
I'm
military.
worried now.
Are you worried?
Whatever
Oh
you
no, no,
save for
you're
the
safe.
end
But
must
I
be.
think I think you might be able to give more of your opinion. Maybe I think you can get off that fence and not worry about any more splinters. In terms of his birthday that's coming up, that happens to coincide with this enormous military parade that is planned. Like, happy birthday to me. This is, of course, it reinforces this whole strongman image. He's going to have this huge parade, procession, whatever you want to call it. In June, July, I can't quite remember. I mean, when I
So,
found out about this, I just thought, of course that's what he does. Of course Donald Trump does that. What did you make of it? Or what do you make of it? Because it's to celebrate the Army's 250th anniversary, isn't it? That's the actual reason. But the very fact that you are going to have a military parade of this kind of size, I guess. I mean, I've seen one in North Korea. I've witnessed it myself. I've seen them in China. I worked out in China for a while. And now the United States is having one, which sounds to me very similar.
yeah, no, I mean, I think that's what we're expecting. We're expecting to see basically North Korea in the streets of Washington.
Wow.
I don't know what to say. I mean, we're not really into monarchy in this country. It goes back to this guy George III. I don't want to get into all of that with you, but we're not big into that. You guys, effectively, your monarchs are beloved, but no longer have power and certainly aren't, reviewing, a military parade in front of them every day. I think that the Western world basically has decided that that bowing to to royalty and basically military-backed royalty and fully military-backed power is not the best way to go. And yet, at the same time, I think Trump embraces it and loves the idea that he will be, at the center of that attention.
Why is he doing it?
I think he believes that it makes him look more powerful, and I think he just likes the attention. I mean, I really truly believe. I mean, look, everything around him is.
I can't believe sometimes that we're talking about the leader of the free world, and you're just saying to me he just wants more attention.
That's exactly. I mean, I don't know how to put it more accurately. It's very simple. He wants more attention. He wants to look like the most powerful person in the world. He wants to look like. I mean, yeah.
Well, we shall see soon enough, in a month's time or whatever. Happy birthday to you, Donald.
Is what I'm saying to you, does that not ring true?
Yes, of course. Of course it does. It does. Jonathan, it's been a total pleasure talking to you. Thank you very, very much for your time. And hopefully we get to chat again soon. That is all we have time for this week. Jonathan, thank you again. And thank you all for listening and watching us today. Remember, you can watch every episode of Talking Politics USA on ITVX and on YouTube, as well as on your favourite podcast platform. And don't forget to subscribe while you're there. You can also email us if you've got a question or a comment at talkingpolitics@itv.com. Talking Politics USA will be back next Monday. Until then, goodbye.